The Machinist is a 2004 drama thriller, and it's a movie which I found to be very intriguing. Movies of a similar type to this include things like Memento, but the difference is Memento seems, from what I've heard at least, to be much more talked about and much more remembered than The Machinist. Now, I've seen both films, and I have to say that I vastly prefer The Machinist to Memento. I found Memento to be an interesting experimentation with how to play a movie in a non-linear way, and that was cool. But I personally found The Machinist to be more intriguing. I found the performances in The Machinist to be better, along with the characters in it. There are some characters, without spoiling anything, in Memento, which to me at least felt like they didn't really need to be there. Whereas with the characters in The Machinist, each one of them I thought was a great character, even the ones that you don't necessarily like or follow as much. All play very good roles. Now, in the primary role in the film, you've got Christian Bale playing one of his probably creepiest, many people would say, roles, but I think the main reason why people call it his creepiest role is because of the way he looks, rather than the way he acts. He doesn't really act like a creep in the movie, he just gives a great, depressed performance. Now, without spoiling anything that you can't see from a quick write-up or a trailer, he suffers from insomnia in the movie, and insomnia in real life causes many problems, so there's a precedent set from a real-world standpoint for that to cause major issues in a person's life, and that does happen in the film. Now, you've also got a great supporting cast, with some actors better known than others. You've got Jennifer Jason Leigh and Michael Ironside both in supporting roles, and again, they're both great characters, and the film overall has a very, not necessarily depressing look, but a very somber look. The colours are very washed out, it's a gritty, unhappy looking world, and very deliberately so. I would say that the look of the film very much complements the way that it's told, the way that it's laid out, and the story itself. It's appropriate. It means that all the twists and turns that happen throughout the movie, and there are quite a few of them, don't really change from that tone. It's not jarring because you've already got that visual tone set up, which is subconsciously getting you prepared to some degree for radical changes in storyline and revelations to happen, etc. Now, this is definitely the kind of movie, more so for me than with Memento, that I would say you definitely need to watch at least twice to really decide whether you like it or not. Because the first time you watch the film, it's a trip. The film takes you all over the place, and it's not until the very end that everything falls into place. But even then, you'll probably finish the film in kind of a dulled state. You'll think to yourself, what really did I just watch? I need to watch that again, maybe even take notes to fully appreciate it, and it really is that kind of film. Now, the second time you watch it, I think, is much more of a decider as to whether you like the film. The film is not happy, it's not a joyous film, it's not a feel-good film, it's not the kind of film to throw in with friends in a cheerful environment, it's just not that kind of movie. Because for one thing, this is the kind of movie where every little detail is very important and adds to the overall story, but also because the tone of the film just isn't really suitable for a group watching experience. To be honest, this is a movie which I would say you should watch alone at least once, because then you can totally focus on every little detail that unfolds. Now, the film didn't do all that well at the box office. It made just over $8 million from a $5 million budget, which isn't too bad, but it's not amazing, so it's not too difficult to understand why the film isn't as remembered. And as far as the story, well, it's not the kind of story that you can really go into at all without starting to spoil stuff. So the only stuff I can really tell you is the same kind of stuff that you could see from a trailer or from a quick rundown, and that is that it's about this main character played by Christian Bale who lost a huge amount of weight, almost a dangerous amount of weight for this movie, Apparently, due to a typo, he lost 60 pounds. I'm not sure what he was supposed to lose. And there's kind of notorious stories about how much weight he lost, including the pretty notorious story of how he lost so much weight that his glute muscles, aka his butt cheeks, fell out of their sockets from losing so much weight. Now, I can understand why people would think that to look at him, it's kind of creepy, because he does look extremely thin. It's kind of jarring when you first see that, but he's fine. His next movie after this was Batman, where he was far bulkier, and so you don't really need to worry about his state in the film. He's still alive now, of course, and he got over it just fine. I love the amount of effort that he put into the role, preparing for it, and in the role as well. It's these smaller movies which oftentimes allow actors to show what they're really capable of, rather than big blockbusters such as the aforementioned Batman, as good as those are, and I do love those as well. Now, as far as that story, as I mentioned, it follows his character with, as I mentioned earlier, his problems with insomnia and various other issues in his life that are kind of nagging things, the sort of things which affect people in real life, which gives the film another layer of relatability. But what then about our individual scores? Well, first of all, as always, we have the story and the plot of the movie, and for the story, I'm going to rate this movie really high. 10 out of 10, and the reason why is because there are so few movies these days which don't spell every little thing out for you. Movies which don't highlight the important information on screen, they just present it, and if you miss it, you miss it, so you have to be paying attention. Movies which require multiple viewings to really understand them. You just don't get as many movies like that anymore. In indie films you do get some, but even then, not as much as you would hope to have. Movies which really require more thought than just one viewing. This is definitely one of those movies, and I really liked it for that. It's the kind of movie as well which you need to give yourself a bit of time to really mull over whether it's your kind of movie or not. At least that was the case for me, and after thinking about it and watching it again, I decided that yes, I do like it. It's not the kind of movie which I'll shove on, every weekend or frequently, but it's certainly a movie which I appreciate for the quality and craftsmanship put into it. So overall, it's a definite 10 from me. As far as the characters and their motivations in their particular roles, again, I'm actually going to give it a 10 in that regard. Christian Bale is superb. He's definitely the outstanding performance in the movie, not just because of the weight that he lost, but just the way he acts in the film, but also the supporting roles from Jennifer Jason Leigh, Michael Ironside, various others as well, are really good. These aren't heroes. Every single person in the movie is flawed in some way. Some life circumstance, some physical thing, some social or mental issue that they have. They are all flawed in some way or have some burden to bear. They felt very real, but at the same time the film has a, I would say, surreal quality to it, and that comes out the most from the characters. The film actually feels almost like, to some degree, you have insomnia watching it. It feels like there's no clear differentiation between days. They all start to blend together. Situations just go from one to the other and kind of give you this, as I said, surreal feeling, and the characters really contribute towards that. So it's a definite 10 from me. As far as the visuals, the special effects, if and where used, I'm going to give the film a 7. Because obviously there aren't many special effects in use. There are some, but it's not that kind of movie, and most of the visuals are visuals associated with the people, the way they look, the way they act, and also the general look of the film, such as the colour grading, which I of course mentioned earlier. I like the colour grading in the film. I like the kind of somber tone visually that the film has, and of course, with most notably Christian Bale's visual change for the movie, you have to reward that. Now, it's not an amazing looking film, I wouldn't say. It's a good looking film, but not mind-blowing. And of course, there aren't many special effects to work with because it's not that kind of story. But overall, I'm giving it a 7 because it certainly wouldn't be fair to rate it as highly as some other films which definitely look better. But for what it was trying to do, I like the look of the film very much. As far as the audio, the soundtrack, etc., the music of the film, I'm going to give it a 5. And that may not sound that great, but for those who are new to the channel, a 5 is basically a baseline for me. 5 is what it needs to be in any particular regard, be it visuals, audio, characters, whatever. Anything below a 5 is then negative, that's below par. Anything higher than a 5 is good to great. So to give it a 5, I'm basically saying the audio, sound design, music did its job. It wasn't overly memorable, but it certainly wasn't bad. It did exactly what it needed to do in the film. Now for me personally, that's not enough to give it a high rating, it just did its job. And for that, I liked it, but it just wouldn't be fair to other films with amazing music or great sound design, such as The Babadook or Rubber or various other films like that, to rate it higher. So it's a 5 from me. As far as the entertainment factor, the rewatchability, which of course is the most subjective to me, I'm going to give the film a pretty high 8, and I had to really deliberate about that number because, as I said, it's not the kind of movie which I will watch often. I may only watch it, say, 3 or 4 times in all of the time that I own it. But the reason why I'm rating it so high is because if you do watch it once, as long as you don't obviously hate it, you will definitely need to watch it again, because it's just that kind of film. So by definition, the rewatchability is almost essential, because you need to watch it at least twice to get the best out of it. So overall, I found it intriguing. I definitely wanted to watch it again, maybe even take notes, and so that is definitely worthy of an 8 for me. The reason why it's not even higher than that is of course because, being as it is with any mystery movie, once you know the story and understand what's going on, it does lose a little bit of rewatchability after that. But that certainly doesn't harm this film too much, because I'm still giving it an 8 in that regard. And that means that overall, as a tabulation of all of the scores put together, I'm going to give The Machinist a very respectable 4 out of 5, putting it in one of the higher levels of movies that I've reviewed. There are certainly some higher, but that's a very respectable score, given that this isn't a movie that's hugely talked about, which is a shame, because it's a lot cleverer than many movies that have made a lot more money. So overall, if you haven't seen this movie, which chances are if you're watching this you probably haven't, I would definitely recommend it. If you like thrillers, movies which tax you mentally that you have to watch a couple of times, and movies where you can totally focus on the performance of the characters rather than flashy visuals and music, then this is the movie for you. It's got a slow pace, a somber tone, and very serious source material on multiple levels. If that appeals to you, definitely check it out. I would most definitely recommend this movie. But that's it overall for this particular review. I'll see you guys next time, and as always, thanks for watching.